Our story begins in a corner of the world humming with ancient history. In the Roman province of Judea, under the watchful eye of an empire, a new voice emerged. This was a land of prophets and kings, a place where people held onto a promise of redemption. It was here in the small town of Nazareth that a man named Jesus began a ministry that would echo through the ages. His message was simple, yet profound. It was a call to love God and to love one's neighbor as oneself. He spoke of forgiveness, of compassion for the poor and the marginalized, and of a kingdom not of this world. Jesus' teachings were radical for their time. He spoke in parables, simple stories with deep spiritual truths that resonated with fishermen, farmers, and tax collectors. He gathered a small group of followers, his apostles, who walked with him, listened to his words, and witnessed what they described as miracles. The story passed down through generations tells of his final days in Jerusalem, a last supper with his closest friends, a betrayal, a trial, and ultimately, a crucifixion, a brutal Roman method of execution reserved for rebels and criminals. They believed that 3 days after his death, Jesus rose from the grave. This event, the resurrection, became the cornerstone of a new faith. With their hearts set ablaze by the resurrection, the apostles embarked on a remarkable journey. They were not wealthy men, nor were they powerful in the eyes of the world. They fanned out from Jerusalem, their footsteps tracing the paths of trade and empire. They carried no swords, no gold, only a story of a man who had conquered death. These early Christian communities were small, intimate gatherings. In a rigidly hierarchical Roman world, these communities were radically egalitarian. As the apostles traveled, they created a network of light across the known world. A whisper of hope that began in a small province was about to become a voice heard across the world. The growth of this new religion did not go unnoticed. The Roman authorities demanded loyalty to their gods and to the deified emperor. The Christians' refusal to participate in state-sanctioned worship was seen as treason, and so, the persecutions began under emperors like Nero and Diocletian. They were thrown to lions, burned as human torches, crucified. Yet paradoxically, the faith grew stronger. They developed secret symbols and gathered in the catacombs. Then, at the dawn of the 4th century, everything changed. A Roman general named Constantine was marching to battle. On the eve of battle, he saw a vision in the sky, a cross of light. He ordered his soldiers to paint the Christian symbol on their shields. They were victorious. Constantine became sole ruler. With the Edict of Milan in 313 AD, he declared an end to the persecutions. The faith that had been hunted was now free. The journey from the catacombs to the palace had begun. With the support of the empire, Christianity underwent a breathtaking transformation. As the Western Roman Empire crumbled, the church emerged as a beacon of stability. At the heart of this age was the cathedral, monuments to the glory of God. Construction could take centuries, involving entire communities. Inside, light itself became a theological statement through stained glass windows. Beyond cities, Christianity continued to spread across Europe. The Crusades sought to reclaim the Holy Land, a complex and often violent chapter. It shows us that through this long journey, the high ideals of faith have sometimes been entangled with the all-too-human realities of power, politics, and conflict. While cathedrals rose in bustling cities, another powerful expression of faith was taking root in quiet, secluded corners: the monastery. In these communities, men and women chose to withdraw from worldly affairs to dedicate their lives entirely to God. Known as monks and nuns, they followed the rule of Saint Benedict, structuring their days around prayer. Monasteries became guardians of Western civilization after Rome's collapse. In the monastic scriptorium, monks preserved the classical heritage, copying the Bible, philosophy, science, and literature. They wrote with quill and ink, added intricate illustrations, and applied gold leaf. Ora et labora, pray and work. Labor was a form of prayer. Monks cleared forests, drained swamps, and developed new agricultural techniques. They ran guest houses for pilgrims, hospitals for the sick, and almonries for the poor. They brewed beer, made cheese, and cultivated medicinal herbs. Monasteries were islands of peace, order, and productivity. As the first millennium drew to a close, deep fissures appeared within the house of faith, centered in Rome and Constantinople. While they shared the same core faith, differences in language, culture, and theological interpretation drove them apart. The simmering tensions finally boiled over in 1054, formalizing the split between the Roman Catholic Church in the West and the Eastern Orthodox Church in the East. In the West, the papacy's power grew immense, popes wielding influence over kings and queens, but with great power came challenges, accusations of corruption, wealth, and practices like the sale of indulgences. By the late Middle Ages, voices like John Wycliffe and Jan Hus called for reform. They championed the Bible in common tongue, saying faith was personal between the individual and God. Though condemned as heretics, their ideas endured, planting seeds of dissent that would burst into flame. That moment arrived in the early 16th century, and the spark was a German monk named Martin Luther, a devout and brilliant theologian. Tormented by his own sinfulness, his breakthrough came while studying Paul's letters. He became convinced that salvation was a free gift of God's grace, received through faith alone. In 1517, angered by the sale of indulgences, he drafted his 95 theses and nailed them to the castle church door in Wittenberg. Luther's revolution was supercharged by the printing press. Ideas could now be mass-produced and distributed quickly. Pamphlets and Luther's writings were printed by thousands, including his German translation of the New Testament. This put the Bible into ordinary people's hands, allowing them to read it in their own language. The printing press broke the church's monopoly on information and empowered personal interpretation of Scripture. The Reformation shattered religious unity, inspiring reformers like Calvin and Zwingli. This led to new Christian denominations: Lutherans, Calvinists, Anabaptists. In England, King Henry VIII's desire for a male heir led him to break with the Pope and establish the Church of England. The map of Europe was redrawn along religious lines, leading to devastating religious wars. Yet, out of this turmoil came a renewed emphasis on the Bible, personal faith, and a diversity of Christian expression that would define the modern era. As Europe was being reshaped by the Reformation and Counter-Reformation, its horizons were also expanding. The age of exploration saw European ships sail to continents previously unknown to them. Wherever these explorers, traders, and colonizers went, they were accompanied by missionaries. Both Catholic and Protestant churches felt a renewed impulse to fulfill the Great Commission, marking Christianity's transformation into a truly global faith. Catholic missionaries, especially orders like the Jesuits, Franciscans, and Dominicans, played a major role. They journeyed to the Americas, Africa, and Asia, often facing incredible hardship and danger. Figures like Francis Xavier traveled throughout India and Japan, baptizing thousands. In the Americas, missionaries established vast networks seeking to convert indigenous populations. This process was complex and fraught. While many were driven by genuine desire to share faith and provide care, their work was entangled with colonial violence and exploitation. Protestant missions gained momentum later, beginning in the 18th and 19th centuries during the Great Century of Missions. This saw an explosion of missionary societies sending men and women from Europe and North America across the globe. They established churches, founded schools, hospitals, and universities, making significant contributions to literacy and healthcare, translating the Bible into hundreds of local languages. This global spread had a profound impact on Christianity itself. As the faith took root in new cultures, it began to take on new forms. The story of Jesus was heard through different traditions, languages, and worldviews. The music, art, and worship styles of churches in Africa, Asia, and Latin America began to reflect their unique cultural contexts. This was not simply a one-way transmission from west to east or north to south. It was a dynamic process of encounter and adaptation, creating a faith that was more diverse and culturally rich than ever before. Today, as we stand in the 21st century, the journey of Christianity has led to a place its earliest followers could never have imagined. It is the largest and most geographically widespread religion in the world, with over 2 billion adherents. The face of Christianity has changed dramatically. A century ago, the majority of Christians lived in Europe and North America. Today, the faith's center has shifted to the global south. There are now more Christians in Africa than on any other continent. Vibrant communities are flourishing across Latin America and across Asia. This global faith is a beautiful and complex tapestry woven from countless different threads. It is the solemn liturgy of an Orthodox service in Ethiopia. It is the joyful, exuberant worship of a Pentecostal congregation in Brazil. It is the quiet contemplation of a Catholic church in the Philippines. It is the impassioned sermon in a Baptist church in the American South. It is expressed in thousands of denominations and independent movements, each with unique traditions, yet all are connected by a shared belief in the life, death, and resurrection of Jesus Christ. In our modern, interconnected world, Christians continue to wrestle with fundamental questions. How do we love our neighbor in a world of deep divisions? How do we seek justice for the poor and the oppressed? How do we find hope in the face of suffering? Believers continue to build hospitals, feed the hungry, advocate for human rights, work for peace and reconciliation, inspiring incredible acts of charity, compassion and self-sacrifice, providing a moral compass and a source of profound meaning for billions. The epic journey of Christianity is a story of human faith and divine mystery. It began as a whisper in a forgotten province and grew into a global chorus. It is marked by courage and frailty, by unity and division, by moments of sublime beauty and episodes of deep failure. It has shaped civilizations, inspired masterpieces of art and music, and transformed countless individual lives. The journey is far from over. The story continues to be written every day in the hearts and lives of people around the world, who still find in the ancient message of Jesus a timeless promise of hope, redemption, and love.